Hello, welcome to the Global Intel Network. In January 2026, as the USS Abraham Lincoln and its entire carrier strike group surged toward the Persian Gulf to confront escalating tensions with Iran, military analysts in Beijing believed they had identified a rare opportunity. To them, the Pacific looked exposed. What followed would prove just how wrong that assumption was and why the United States Navy never leaves a strategic gap undefended. For decades, the U.S. has maintained a carefully calibrated balance of power across two oceans. Carrier strike groups rotate between the Pacific and the Middle East, ensuring constant American presence and dominance in both theaters. But in early 2026, that balance faced its most serious test in years. If you enjoy this video, please give us a thumb up and subscribe to the channel. The Persian Gulf was reaching a boiling point. Iranian threats against vital shipping lanes intensified, while Houthi attacks in the Red Sea grew more aggressive. Faced with a rapidly deteriorating security environment, the Pentagon made a decisive call. Deploy the USS Abraham Lincoln. The Nimitz-class supercarrier, carrying nearly 90 aircraft, departed the Pacific alongside a formidable escort: one Ticonderoga-class cruiser, 4 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, and multiple fast-attack submarines. More than 6,000 sailors and billions of dollars in military hardware began moving west, bringing with them a vast umbrella of air and maritime dominance. And China noticed. To Chinese military strategists, this was the moment they had been waiting for. The Pacific Fleet's most combat-ready carrier group was now thousands of miles away. The USS Ronald Reagan was in port, undergoing maintenance in Japan. The USS Theodore Roosevelt was still weeks from its scheduled Pacific deployment. From Beijing's perspective, the math was simple. Satellite imagery over the South China Sea began showing increased activity. Chinese naval vessels initiated routine exercises in disputed waters. Fighter jets pushed closer to Taiwan's Air Defense Identification Zone. In the Philippine Sea, Chinese submarines started probing positions they had avoided for months. China's calculation was clear. With the Abraham Lincoln gone, America's response time in the Pacific would stretch from hours to weeks. What they failed to account for was Plan B. More specifically, they failed to understand a foundational principle of U.S. naval doctrine: redundancy. Even as the Abraham Lincoln steamed toward the Middle East, the U.S. Navy quietly activated what some insiders refer to as the Pacific Shield Protocol. First came the USS Carl Vinson. Originally scheduled for training exercises near Hawaii, the Nimitz-class carrier was abruptly redirected. Within 72 hours, carrying roughly 70 aircraft, it repositioned into the Western Pacific. Its movements were classified, its presence intentionally unannounced. But that was only the surface picture. What Chinese satellites could not see was what was happening beneath the waves. The U.S. Navy's submarine force, arguably the most lethal and least visible military arm on Earth, had already shifted. Virginia-class fast-attack submarines, each armed with Tomahawk cruise missiles and capable of tracking enemy vessels for weeks without detection, were operating in the South China Sea. And then there was the wild card: the USS Ohio, a guided missile submarine, massive, silent, and devastatingly powerful. A single Ohio-class vessel carries up to 154 Tomahawk cruise missiles, more strike capability than many nations possess in total. As Chinese naval forces maneuvered on the surface, they had no idea just how much American firepower was watching from 400 feet below. On January 19, 2026, Chinese planners decided to escalate. A flotilla, including the Liaoning carrier group, began moving toward Scarborough Shoal, disputed waters claimed by the Philippines, a treaty ally of the United States. The maneuver was deliberate and provocative, designed to test whether Washington could respond in time. The response came faster than expected. Within 3 hours, a U.S. Navy P-8 Poseidon maritime patrol aircraft appeared overhead. Then another. Then a third. The Chinese flotilla was now under continuous, real-time surveillance. Moments later, the message intensified. The USS Carl Vinson revealed its position roughly 600 miles east, close enough to project air power, far enough to remain protected. Within hours, FA-18 Super Hornets were conducting routine flight operations in the area. But the clearest signal came from below the surface. A Virginia-class submarine deliberately surfaced within visual range of the Chinese destroyer Nanjing. It did not threaten, it did not maneuver aggressively. It simply made itself visible. The message was unmistakable. We know where you are. We have always known, and we are everywhere. Within 24 hours, the Chinese flotilla reversed course. Beijing's official statement described the move as the successful conclusion of scheduled exercises, but satellite imagery told another story. Ships returning to port well ahead of schedule, and the Liaoning carrier group retreating to Hainan Island. U.S. analysts called it what it was, a correction of a strategic miscalculation. China had gambled that the U.S. Navy was stretched too thin, that the departure of the Abraham Lincoln had created an opening in the Pacific. Instead, they rediscovered a reality the U.S. Navy has built its doctrine around for decades. There is no gap. Not in the Pacific, not in the Atlantic, not anywhere. The United States operates 11 aircraft carriers, but more importantly, it commands the world's largest submarine fleet, the most advanced maritime patrol aircraft, and a global network of alliances that multiplies its reach. When one carrier leaves, another appears. When surface forces redeploy, submarines are already watching. And when an adversary believes they've found a weakness, they've likely already been detected. This incident, one that received almost no mainstream media coverage, reveals a fundamental truth about American naval power. The U.S. does not defend the Pacific with a single carrier group. It defends it with a system. A system of satellites tracking every vessel on Earth, submarines that can remain hidden for months, and a doctrine of deterrence built on a single principle. We're always there, even when you think we're not. China learned that lesson in January 2026. The Pacific gap they believed they had found was never a gap at all. It was a trap. And as the USS Abraham Lincoln continues its mission in the Persian Gulf, facing down Iran, it does so knowing the Pacific remains fully covered. Because in the U.S. Navy, there is no such thing as leaving the door unlocked. If you haven't already, subscribe. We cover every major U.S. Navy operation as it happens. Hit the notifications so you don't miss what comes next. Thanks for watching.